So this is sort of a continuation of another message I posted today, but like you may be used to dealing with people that would rather you tell them like a pretty lie than like the ugly truth in regards to certain things, you know? And I'm getting that like I'm not even getting that you even started doing that. Maybe you did, but it's almost giving the sense that like you're used to needing to just hold your tongue around certain people. Or for some of you, you could have like I would say that you are fiery, okay? People could like label you as having a temper or whatever, and like maybe you do. Um, it is what it is, but like maybe you like literally cannot and are unable to hold back the truth. And I'm not getting something that's like just your truth or like you know how people try to like they feel entitled to like I don't know, you know, like they see something that contradicts a deeply held truth that they have, but that truth is like held on an illusion or like a limited perspective or something like that. And then so they feel the need to like lash out and argue and like prove to everybody that their opinion is right and their truth is better than everybody else's. I mean like the literal truth. Like you know, the literal truth like explaining to someone that, you know, I don't know, being pessimistic by nature is not gonna make them happier. You know what I mean? Like, it's only going to being pessimistic is not going to change the outcome, but it is going to like, I mean, it could like okay, the only way that being pessimistic changes the outcome is that like you could sabotage something that's actually supposed to go well, or it just like goes well anyway, but you're miserable internally the whole time in anticipation of something terrible happening. You know what I mean? And that's just the truth. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? So like, it's something like that to where you know you could have experienced people who quite obviously or like very apparently were causing their own problems in some way. And obviously, I'm not talking about people who have not caused their own problems because plenty of people are like you can be a genuine victim. That doesn't mean you need to like perpetually stay in a victim mindset, obviously. But like, you know, there are people who are not victims or, you know, like it's hard to explain. Like, you know, you just know that there are people who create the problems that they're in the midst of. And like a lot of us do that. Almost all of us do that at some point. It's just like being able to silence your ego or like I guess in some ways make it strong enough to be able to withstand the truth and like the accountability to admit which problems you did cause for yourself and like being able to address things accordingly, right? But again, I'm getting that like you may have for a long time, like a long part of your life, and even like experiencing these people in the communities that you've been a part of on the internet or something. Um, People who again they only enjoyed microcosmic truths, if that makes sense. Like, hold on. I don't know. I guess trigger warning for eating disorders or whatever. But like, for example, if like someone in like an ED community or whatever, and then everyone in those communities are always like they're not always. I'm not gonna overgeneralize. I know a lot of people are like struggling and stuff like that, but like the super toxic ones where they're like, oh, this is again like a hyperbolic example, okay? So say everyone's like, "Oh, the best diet for you and to reach your goals is to I don't know, eat 3 boiled eggs a day and like iced coffee." Okay? And like maybe within that community that is true and everyone's like, "Yes, you're right. Like that is perfect." And like, you know, the way that, you know, the mindset and the way that your like neurons are firing within that microcosmic community or whatever is that those things like that become a universal truth but like within that subjective reality in that bubble that has been created, right? But then obviously if you go see like a legit nutritionist or a doctor, they're going to be like, no, obviously for even if you do want to lose more weight and for your goals, that's a terrible idea. For most people, that's just going to lead to binge eating, which is going to lead to gaining more weight and like, which isn't going to help anyway, and stuff like that. And like, again, this is just an example. But again, so it's giving that, like, you know, within that like community, you can't go in there and say, like, hey, I actually don't think this is like, I know we're all struggling and stuff like that. And that's maybe something that is really hard for us to change, the fact that we're struggling. But like, can we at least admit that, like, no, this isn't the best idea for like for this, you know what I mean? And then, the backlash or whatever, or, getting the side eye or being rejected from said community in some way. So like it's like the truth teller of the community is ostracized because that's not a truth that anyone wants to hear. And again, that's just an example, okay? I'm not trying to offend anybody, obviously, because those sort of like microcosmic truths can exist within like family units and stuff like that too. I kind of always bring up this example sometimes in my videos, like when I was like in college, I knew people and like made friends with people who would always talk about how like um their families literally would not let them like like no one in their family was in any sort of like friendship or like relationship dynamic with anybody who did not at least have like a bachelor's or a master's degree, if not more. And like it was just assumed or like sort of projected that like anybody who didn't go, like who didn't have those accolades or whatever, were low value and they didn't try hard enough, and then they just like were unintelligent and stuff like that. And that was just a truth, and that truth like made sense to them, right? Which obviously that's not true. There's plenty of extremely intelligent people who don't have any degrees, and there's plenty of super intelligent people, even people with like doctorates degrees, who are low key like dumbasses. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. Like, there are lawyers who are unreliable, shitty people. Like, you know what I mean? So it doesn't really. But again, um, anyway. So again, I'm getting that like hopefully, or this is sort of like a predictive energy, is that you are moving away from communities like that, like the ones in which they cannot handle truths, or they sort of like reject truths, or they are stuck within their own version of what the truth is, to where it's like pigeonholed them into sort of like, I don't know, pockets of unhappiness, like people who can't possibly, like, this is another example. So say somebody like is under the impression that their soulmate looks a certain way, and then they're like in despair and in disarray because they're like everybody, I don't know, everybody that has this particular like eye color and hair color or even like skin color combo that they believe that the person that they're supposed to marry and have children with is supposed to have, and then everybody that they date who looks like that is like terrible or like treats them really bad, or like isn't, it's just like a not a good fit or whatever. And then they're like, oh, well, that means I don't have a soulmate. That means that like my soulmate doesn't exist, or that, everybody's terrible, blah, blah, blah. But that's because they're not giving an actual chance to their real soulmate, who could like look much differently than, the sort of like narrow pocket of whatever that they are, like the narrow subset of the population that they are allowing themselves to explore in a romantic sense, I guess. So I'm getting that like for this collective, especially if you made it this far in the video, you like hold on, really like moving out of that perspective yourself personally finally, and it may feel a bit uncomfortable, or you are starting to encounter people in your life that don't hold such strict beliefs, but you're still like walking on eggshells around them for some reason, because you are kind of, I wouldn't say like wounded, you just kind of like expect them to react the same as people that you've dealt with in the past. So I was getting like this nervousness in regards to you expecting like a community that you're about to enter, or like a relationship, or even like just a friendship or something. And you may be overly censoring yourself in some way because you're used to dealing with people who are, again, like I feel like you're used to not being able to express yourself just like candidly, like stream of consciousness, like, because people would be, they would just get really offended just by you expressing yourself. And I'm trying to like reassure you that these new connections and like situations and rooms that you're about to enter, the people are not like that. They just aren't like that. So you don't need to, and if you are still around people like that, just keep expressing yourself, because honestly you need to like filter them out of your life anyway, and you'll be fine and attract the right people soon.